One question. If we win, just how much do we get?
Did you know the sounds of the actors screaming during the glass scene in Squid Game isn't acting, but rather the sounds of the actors being terrified because the glass stone game in Squid Game was 100% real, with the actors actually falling from shattering glass. The glass stone scene in the series was arguably the hardest scene to shoot in the whole series. Actress Jung Ho-yeon, who plays Kang Sae-byeok in the show, revealed in a behind-the-scenes interview how scary it was stepping on glass and falling. Filming glass stepping stones was actually terrifying, she said. The show's creator, Hwang Dong-hyuk, said that he designed the set to strike fear in the minds of the actors. The glass made them nervous, he said. I think we could express the unnoticed rigidity and fear of the body. It felt like really jumping off a high bridge. The game was real, and they felt real fear. Their bodies showed that fear. We think that set had the power of realism. The glass stone scene was barely 10 minutes long, but the scene took countless hours to shoot because a lot of it was real and little VFX were used. For example, the shards of glass exploding wasn't fake, but actually glass that was blown up in the studio. The prop designers actually created the circus-looking game from scratch just to record the scene. The only parts that had CGI effects were the falling of the contestants and the glass shards that actually hit the contestants. The scene where the glass shattered at Gi-hun, Sae-byok and Sang Wu was extremely tasking to shoot because the actors only had a small amount of glass explode near them. The slow motion feeling really comes through in how the actors perform. After capturing shots of the trio, each got to do their close-up work with singles as well. The team had to use slow motion and a little bit of VFX here and there to properly tell the story. The first game we saw at Squid Game was red light, green light. Although it looks quite easy to film players running and stopping, it was quite the opposite. First, most people think the crowd they saw at the game was created by special effects. They were 100% real. Instead of using CGI effects for the rest of the extra actors, the crew actually hired over 500 extra actors for the scene. Over 6 different cameras were used simultaneously to film the red light, green light scene, and the camera crew had to actually hold the camera and run behind the contestants for the scene. What was more frustrating was some of the actors who were shot in the game had to lie down on the floor for hours, pretending they were dead for hours, while the remaining actors played their role. The worst part of the game, that led to hundreds of takes, was the fact that no one could get away with cheating during the game either. If one person moved out of time, everyone had to start over. That alone led to hundreds of retakes. VFX was used for the paintings of the wall in Squid Game for a different reason, and that was to send a message. The flat wallpaper that lines the arena of the red light, green light game made it obvious that the planes and sky aren't real. The lack of realism in the sets was used to cause confusion between reality and fiction among the players. When the players first enter the red light, green light set, the art director said, everything seems fake and artificial, so they're denying the fact that people are actually going to die here. The creepy doll that was used in the red light, green light scene was also not CGI and is actually a real doll. The doll was actually borrowed and not made for the show. The imposing Squid Game doll is located near the entrance of Matcha Land, a museum that displays horse carriages. According to village locals, this was the doll's original home before the Squid Game production team temporarily borrowed it for shooting. After they finished filming, the team returned the doll to its post in Jincheon County. Most people would think the honeycomb scene in Squid Game was most likely an easy one because the actors just had to draw out patterns on candy, but the reverse is quite the case. The scene was hectic to say the least. First off, the director had to hire a dalgona expert. Dalgona is the candy used in Squid Game. It was estimated that over 10,000 candies were made just to shoot the scene. There was a prop team that not only helped to make the candies, but also assisted in stamping each one. On top of all that, each actor had their own prop manager who would replace their candy once it started melting or if they needed a new one for a different angle. On top of that, the set designers had to make childhood toys such as swings 4 times the original height to make the contestants look like kids. The sets of the Honeycomb Challenge were purposely made to give the audience a nostalgic feeling, but at the same time, scare the audience by committing murder on a playground setting. The honeycomb scene arguably had one of the least VFX in the whole show, as the only major effect added to the scene was the childlike drawings in the background. The rest of the scene was quite real, although in order to not deafen the actors by repeatedly making a gunshot sound, a verbal sign was given to the actors for them to know when exactly they should react to the gunshot. This also gave their reactions more uniformity. The tug-of-war wasn't a particularly scary scene to shoot, but it was physically tiring. The scene had the actors passed out on the floor from exhaustion. The tug-of-war was mostly made with little VFX, and the set was built from scratch. The falling of the actors was also real, but VFX was used to make it look like they fell a long distance. The sweat, effort, and even chained handcuffs securing them to the rope were also real. However, the dragging against teams was 100% fake. If you were impressed by how realistic the characters' struggles were during the tug-of-war round, well, you may be surprised to find out that the actors weren't competing against each other, and that is exactly why the game felt real to the actors. Hwang, who is the creator of the show, revealed that a machine was pulling from the other side during the scene, which made it extremely difficult for the actors to fight back. It's hard enough to play tug-of-war with people, but they had to tune it up a notch and had players play against each other. According to the show's creator, Lee and the other players tugging on the rope were all worn out. Lee, who plays Song, the main character, confessed that out of all the action films he shot, this is the most difficult scene he's ever done. Hwang even jokes about Lee almost getting knocked out during filming. The look of terror when Lee was hanging between safety and death at the end of the game for his whole team was 100% real, as the platform he was standing on was actually elevated and he did risk falling, but not as far as the show made it to be. The tension was real, as falling more than a meter down isn't a pleasant thing for all. The falling of contestants looked quite impressive because they did fall from a rope, but with the help of some VFX, the gravity of the fall was exaggerated. That's why the scene where the contestants are lying on the floor tired looks so real, because the actors were literally exhausted from spending hours playing tug-of-war against a machine. Even the sweat of the contestants is 100% real. The realness of the game showed more, especially on the elevator back down, where the players looked mentally strained. This altogether gave the tug-of-war scene far more depth. If you pay attention to the tug-of-war scene and look closely at the floor as the Squid Game players take on the tug-of-war game, you'll notice the gray, mottled flooring is made to look like a car road. It even has yellow center lines and fake street lines to make it look like a real road. The production crew added this scene to send a message. Since the players are stuck with mountains of debt with no clear pathway forward, the art direction team decided to go with a disconnected roadway for the set. This represents how the players have nowhere to go in their lives, as well as how many of them live on the streets. The final Squid Game between the last two contestants had the least amount of actors and props, but was still very difficult to shoot. First off, there were more than 12 camera people. The camera crew had to use handheld cameras in order to properly capture the fight scene between the two. To make things even more difficult, they had to record the fight under a muddy surface due to the rain the crew had to make in order to give the scene a more dramatic look. One of the hardest sets to make in Squid Game was surprisingly the least dangerous and fearful place in the whole series, which was the marble game arena. Squid Game art director Kang Sae-byeok said that the set for marbles was the set that the team put the most effort into, a job that seemed to pay off, as many of the actors said that the location created a real sense of nostalgia. She also explains that conceptually, the set sits in between real and fake to parallel the life and death nature of the games. Another cool thing about the marble game set was the foreshadowing of the character's death. One detail in particular fans may not have noticed is the flowers in the scene with Kang Sae-byeok, Jung Ho-yeon, and Gi-hun, the Yu-mi. In the scene, which is a huge favorite among viewers, the art director arranged flower pots behind Sae-byok and Gi-hun. In Sae-byok's pot is a live flower, while in Gi-hun's pot is a dead one. Heartbreakingly, this foreshadows which character will die in the game from the very beginning. And that's all, folks. Don't forget to hit that sub button and like button and turn on post notification to get alerted when we drop more cool videos.